Hola amigos y bienvenidos a Chobordo Spanish Oasis. Aquí practicamos y aprendemos el español. Hello friends and welcome to Chobordo Spanish Oasis, where we practice and learn Spanish together. In today's video, we will be discussing basic greetings and farewells in Spanish. Greetings are essential in any conversation we may be having. This is the basis in which the conversation is built or developed. To start a conversation in English, we often say hi or hello. The Spanish equivalent to this is hola, hola. Note that the H here is silent. So instead of saying hola, you say hola. So again, that means hi or hello. Hola. As you can see here as well, exclamation marks are used. The difference in terms of the way exclamation marks are written in Spanish and English is that the beginning of the sentence, or in this case, since it's a single word, the exclamation mark is inverted at the beginning of the sentence, and then at the end of the sentence we see another exclamation mark that's written in a similar fashion that we're used to writing exclamation marks in English. Once you've greeted the person saying hola, which is hi or hello, you may want to greet them based on the time of day. For good morning, you would say buenos días. Buenos días. Buenos días. Buenos días. For good afternoon or good evening, you would say buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. For good night, you would say buenas noches. Buenas noches. Buenas noches. Note that some words in Spanish can be masculine or feminine. This can be nouns or adjectives. Based on whether the concept we're reviewing or we're covering is masculine or feminine, it changes the way we say certain things. It can be noted that we said buenos días, but for good afternoon or evening, we went on to say buenas tardes, and for good night, we said buenas noches. Essentially, the buenos changed to buenas. This is so because the words are feminine. So the words tardes and noches are feminine words, and for that reason, we had to say buenas instead of buenos. And the word días is masculine, and so that's why we say buenos. Don't worry too much about this now. We will be covering masculine and feminine words in a later video. You may want to ask someone how they're doing. In this case, you could ask, ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? You can also note here that the question mark is used. It is written in a similar fashion as noted with the exclamation marks, wherein at the beginning of the sentence, the question mark is inverted. The first question mark is inverted, and at the end of the sentence, it's written in a similar format as we would write it in English. ¿Cómo estás? You can also say, ¿Qué tal? ¿Qué tal? ¿Qué tal? Note, however, that these are informal ways of asking someone how they're doing. So this is how you would ask your friend, a close family member, as well as someone you're very much used to. This is something important to note in Spanish. There are different ways in which you speak to someone you're used to as opposed to speaking with someone who you highly respect or someone who you're not so used to. So the way you speak with your friend is not the same way how you would typically speak to your professor. Instead of saying ¿Cómo estás?, which is the informal manner to ask someone how they're doing, if you want to ask your professor how they're doing, you would ask ¿Cómo está usted? ¿Cómo está usted? ¿Cómo está usted? As you can see, the words como as well as está in this case consist of accent marks. Again, the accent marks are used to guide you in terms of the pronunciation of the word. And the accent mark is where the stress lies within the word. For example, in the word como, it's como. Como as opposed to como. Como. Como está. So the accent marks guide you in terms of or to stress when pronouncing the word. The presence or absence of an accent mark as well changes not only the pronunciation but also the meaning of the word. For instance, the word como with the accent mark on the first O means how. However, without the accent mark on either of the O's, it means as or like. Again, in order to ask someone how they're doing formally, such as your professor, your pastor, or someone who you highly respect, you would ask, ¿Cómo está usted? ¿Cómo está usted? Now let's review the responses. If you would like to tell someone that you're doing fine or you're doing well, you can simply say, Estoy bien. Estoy bien. Estoy bien. If you want to say you're not doing well, you can simply add no to the beginning of the sentence and say no estoy bien. No estoy bien. No estoy bien. You can also say estoy mal. Estoy mal. Estoy mal. This is also the way you would say that you're sick. Estoy mal. You may also use any of the following variations. Más o menos, muy bien, no tan bueno, estoy triste, estoy feliz. Once you've answered the question, you may want to ask the person how they're doing as well. You can simply ask and you, which would be y tú, just as we would in English, and you. Or you can say y tú, but also repeat the full question. Y tú, ¿cómo estás? Let's move on to asking names. To ask someone their name, there are two ways you can say it in Spanish. The first way we will be reviewing is ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? While we're here, let's review the pronunciation of the double L in Spanish. While the pronunciation may vary from one region to another, it's generally accepted as a similar pronunciation to the letter Y in English. So, yeah. So in this case, ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? That's the informal way of asking the question. So if you'd like to ask the question in a more formal manner to, for example, a professor or a pastor or someone you highly respect, you could ask, ¿Cómo se llama usted? ¿Cómo se llama usted? ¿Cómo se llama usted? To respond, the person would simply say, Me llamo, and then state their name. Me llamo Trevardo. Me llamo Trevardo. Another way you can ask someone their name is ¿Cuál es tu nombre? ¿Cuál es tu nombre? ¿Cuál es tu nombre? Also bear in mind this is the informal way of asking the question. So a more formal manner would be ¿Cuál es su nombre? ¿Cuál es su nombre? ¿Cuál es su nombre? In this case, the response would be Mi nombre es. Mi nombre es. Mi nombre es. Mi nombre es. Now let's cover farewells in Spanish. So the conversation is over and you guys are about to depart. Here are some ways you can bid the person farewell. You could say adios, 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 adios. You can also say hasta la vista, hasta la vista, hasta la vista, hasta la vista. Note here that the H is silent, and so instead of saying hasta, you say hasta la vista. You can also say hasta luego, hasta luego, hasta luego, hasta luego, hasta pronto, hasta pronto, hasta pronto, hasta mañana, hasta mañana, hasta mañana. Note here that the ñ is present. So instead of it being a regular N, ene, we now have the tilde on top of the N. And so it changes the pronunciation. However, in terms of pronouncing this letter, it's always helpful to think of there being a Y after the N. So instead of saying manana, you say mañana. So just imagine there's a Y after the N whenever you see the tilde on top of the N. So mañana, hasta mañana. You may want to tell the person to take care. You can say cuídate, 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 cuídate. Note, however, that that's the informal way of saying it. Instead, you could say in a more formal manner, let's say you're speaking to your professor or someone you highly respect, you would say cuídese, cuídese. That will be all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe as we continue to learn Spanish together. Hasta pronto!